Well, I'm not sure you want to hear that. We have a sound issue going on.
We can hear everything on Zoom. Go ahead.
If I don't stop talking, I'm going to start dancing again. So Alice, that mic's not working? We're waiting for on our Zoom lead, so.
Yeah, the sound that you hear sounds great. The sound on the Zoom is not done yet.
And who's more important, Zoom or you? I think it's Zoom working. But what's wrong with Zoom?
For some reason it's not, well, first you couldn't unmute that computer to let the sound go on Zoom.
No? How many people are on Zoom? I just saw 20, 21 people. That's a lot of people.
Okay. All right. I'll go tell him it's all right. I'll go up there.
Oh, you're down there. Just about ready. Good morning, everyone. We think it's fixed, but keep your fingers crossed. Okay, welcome to our service from the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence. My name is Jan Nettler, and I'm on the worship committee. If you're new or returning after a time away, we're very glad to see you. Please feel free to fill out one of our blue welcome cards, which you can find in the pews, and you can put it in the offering plate later, and we'll put you on our contact list. There's also a link online on the online version in the chat. We strive to be a congregation that welcomes people of all ages, races, and religious beliefs, backgrounds and sexual orientation, gender identities, and abilities. We belong to the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, and we are guided and inspired by its values and principles. Our values and principles move us to remember that those of us in the Pioneer Valley live on unceded homeland of the Pecumtuck, Nonotuck, and Western Nipmuc peoples. We acknowledge our responsibility to confront the legacies of dispossession and systematic racism that are part of our collective history, while we affirm and celebrate the many legacies that inspire us. There is childcare downstairs if any of you need it. I'm thinking of going. Also, we have drawing materials and other ways to occupy your hands on the tables in the back there. Restrooms are downstairs and you can be reached by either of those doors. You can take the stairs or the elevator. I want to thank James O'Neill, who's from our young adult group, who will be playing music for us today. Oh, yay. And I want to thank Elaine Apthorpe for leading us in hymns today. And I want to introduce Alice Wanamaker. So here are a few words that Alice wrote in her whimsical manner. Alice Wanamaker, she, her, is a lifelong USNF member, raised in East Hampton, and a rising senior at Williams College. Besides a chaotic litany of legal interests, she enjoys math, cooking, melodramatic writing, and her tiny, stupid dog. Does your dog have a name, Alice? Lexi Lou. Lexi Lou. I'm sure Lexi Lou isn't that stupid. She is? Okay. So I want to say a few more things of my own about Alice. If you've been a member here or been coming for a long time, you saw Alice grow up here for the past 21 years or something like that. And she was always a strong presence. Everybody knew Alice Wanamaker. She was an amazing person, and I had the great opportunity to spend Sunday afternoons with her for 4 years when she was in youth group, which was a great honor for me, a great privilege. Also, when she was at East Hampton High School, her team won the national champion of We the People, Citizens and the Constitution. East Hampton High School has won the state championship 7 years in a row and 8 years in their lifetime, and that was the one they won the national championship, so congratulations, Alan. So it's a great honor to introduce Alice. So now we will begin our service. We're here to celebrate and to reflect and support one another. It's good to be together.
Witness to the art. And nobody knows. Let the yoke fall from our shoulders. Don't carry it all, don't carry it all. We are all our hands in raise a glass to turnings of the season. Watch it as it arcs towards the sun, and you must bear your neighbor's burden within reason, and your labors will be borne when all is done. And nobody knows, let the yoke fall from our shoulders. Don't carry it all, don't carry it all. We are all our hands and holders beneath this bold and brilliant sun. And this I swear to all. 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 To all, to all, to all. Good morning. Before I begin the official words of this service, I wanted to offer my own thank you. I planned this service very last minute while living 100 miles from here, and I am incredibly, unbelievably grateful to the people who have helped me put it together. To James O'Neill and Elaine Apthorpe for the beautiful guitar music you're going to hear today, along with a little bit of my janky piano. To Jan Nettler, who did an incredible amount of work and also did things like called me to help plan this service, and when I said, "How are you?" she said, "Great, I hiked up a volcano today." To the 6 or 7 people who were working to fix that Zoom audio thing just now, and to anyone who was part of this that I didn't know about, thank you. It's gonna be me talking. It was not me who made this happen. After being humiliated, one continues the manuscript of identity. Activities, diseases, doldrums, the crony affair after the situation. The one where one faces how one is the undertaste, how one isn't the neighbor, the pie baker, a white folk, how one isn't a gorgeous dream wrapped up in tireless affection, primped for wider screens. So there one grew, in the coffee sickness, the dictionary browsing, in a fury for the word entitlement to spill. After convulsing with rage, one continues in the aftermath of no friends on Tuesdays, or shouting fiercely when nothing sobered, to the 11th hour, and the tide shrunk to its sense of privacy, where it had nothing to do with shores or moons. And humiliation sat on its lover's knee, greeting the eccentric rich and the hourglass with such force, the rage enameled like fine paint to a sheen of deep blue. Restless in the way that stirs the crowd to its feet to claim the encounter for the intentions of personal gain without the empire, without the embarrassment of shaking one's head, of resting it underneath the ground, to live sanctioned in the migrancy with an ugly plate for the economy, but working ever so hard. So unplanned, so beyond what one did before the lack of dignity sang an opera, and organized all the ideas before rage shot a bird that had once watched effortlessly all the comings and goings. Yes. Now I invite everyone to rise and body your spirit for our chalice lighting, after which we'll remain standing for the first hymn. We light our chalice as a beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning. We light our chalice as a beacon of love, in celebration of the life we share together.
number 121 on your screen. You know that we'll build a land. We'll build a land. We'll find up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free. Where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a boundless land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, till then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them gardens instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where saints come together, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where people together, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where yokes of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come, build a land, my people we seek. Come, build a land where people together, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Thanks, Elaine, that was great. So it's now time for us to greet one another. If you're on Zoom, you're invited to turn on your videos, wave and say hello in the chat. It's helpful to, oh, it's for me, sorry. Anyone online or here is new or newish would like to tell us, please say hello and tell us where you're from.
Hello, everyone. Not too many of us today, but it's nice to see you all.
Where did Jan go?
Hi, Kathy. Hi, everyone.
Teresa, recognize your voice.
A little slow this one.
Alice's grandmother is here watching. That's Barbara Wanamaker. Hi, Barbara. Nice to have you with us.
You must be so proud, Barbara.
I don't know, can I be heard? This is Mary Beth asking if Alice could please stay close to the mic or turn up the volume because it's very difficult to hear her speak.
Okay.
I'm so jealous. I got stuck up here and you guys were all having fun down there. So now it's time for our social justice minute. Part of our mission at the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence says that we're called to service, inspired to make the world a better place. In that realm, I'd like to read something from the group USNF The Vote. The forces that threaten our democracy are not on vacation this summer, and neither is USN The Vote. We have two gatherings planned in July, and stay tuned for more in August. The first gathering is on Zoom on Wednesday, July 17th, between 6 and 7, when they'll discuss the authoritarian playbook for 2025. This influential report focuses on promises made by the previous president for what he'll do in his second term, explore how he plans to carry them out, and concludes with 10 recommendations for preventing an authoritarian takeover. Then on July 17th, we'll discuss the report and actions that can be taken to defend democracy. If you're online, there's some links there you can see, and if you're here, there'll be links in the Sunday Times. And then on July 25th, it's from 7 to 8:30, there'll be a gathering in the social hall right behind me for dessert, postcarding, and conversation to make sense together of the tumultuous events impacting our democracy and what we are called to do. Okay. I think it's Alice here. Oh, no, yeah.
Our generosity makes everything we do possible, and it helps us support organizations and movements in the greater community. Half of the proceeds of each week's offering support the Society's operating budget, and half are shared outside our walls. The organizations we are currently supporting are listed on the screen, and our morning offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Morning, everybody. If you know this song, please do not hesitate to sing along. La 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 la. Ooh, ooh, ooh. It's gonna take a lot of love take a lot of love, or we won't get too far. If you are out there waiting, I hope you show up soon. 'Cause my heart needs relating, not solitude. Ooh, ooh, it's gonna take a lot of love to get us through the night. It's gonna take a lot of love to make things work out right. If you look in my direction and we don't see eye to eye, my heart needs protecting, and so do I. Gonna take a lot of love. Gotta take a lot of love. La 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 la. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Take a lot of love to change this world. It's gonna take a lot of love. It's gonna take a lot of love.
In light of the news that we all saw yesterday evening, I decided to switch the order of the last two readings in today's service because I wanted to give us a chance to all sit with the idea that I was originally planning to send us out with. There is no world in which more kindness and more trust stops being possible. All the time we've saved since we stopped praying for our souls hasn't filled the hole inside the human gut, hasn't stopped the human nervous system from being very nervous. But maybe if we listen very hard, we can find the point of intersection, the precise frequency and wavelength where history stops repeating its directions and leaves some room to breathe. It is a simple task, just the job on any given day of raising the whole world above your head, one aspirin, one teacup, one traffic ticket at a time. The way a volunteer might raise his hand to apply for evolution, even though it means the possible extinction of his former personality, even though it means replacing what is right in front of you with what is right in front of you, again and again, with a vigorous persistence, until the moment and the room seem to run together in the composition of a country you could stand to serve. O Lord, allow me to continue to preach your gospel of rock and roll among the deaf and dear departed creatures of the heart. Shield us from the fear which translates as fatigue, retrain our minds from their unhappiness, and make our lives the theater for many strange delights, for which we'll twist and shout and sometimes even sing, as if we didn't know the meaning of the word responsibility, or as if part of our responsibility belonged to joy. Let's take a moment in silence. Now please rise as you are willing and able and join us in singing hymn number 159, This Is My Song.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and vine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Since I started college, my most constant religious practice has been trying to figure out how to write laws and policies that will affirm the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It's easy to write affirmative words, but it's harder to write words with an affirmative impact, and I'm trying to figure out the difference. Towards that end, I felt for a long time that I needed to learn to speak Spanish in order to ethically write policy in this country. So I spent this past semester in southern Arizona as part of a Quaker-led border studies program, where I lived in a homestay with a Spanish-speaking family, studied the region's history of oppression and resistance, and worked in a short-term asylum shelter. The program's dynamic, especially between the 6 students, felt exactly like what I imagine 3 months straight of youth group would, if you were dehydrated all the time. I learned more in Arizona than I had in the rest of my political science classes combined. I learned about how borders are constantly being built and militarized, and about when that process started, because there is a moment when it started. I learned about oppression and resistance in a more materially brutal way than I had before. I learned about the border, and I learned the lies I had been taught about it. I learned about how to be angry, which I've never been great at, and I learned how to be hopeful, even though it got harder. I want to talk today about some things I saw there, because I feel better now about my approach to doing social justice work. Not always good and not like an expert, but better than I did before I left. And it's so hard right now to feel good about doing good for people and changing things for people that when I found something that felt helpful, I wanted to share it. I want to start with the moment where I felt the most energized and inspired there. In March, I got to go to the church where the sanctuary movement was founded. So in the 1980s, the US was categorically denying asylum claims from a bunch of Central American countries where people were fleeing civil wars. The church, Southside Presbyterian in Tucson, smuggled people across the border to their sanctuary and then further into the US, or even into Canada through a caravan of volunteers. In total, over 13,000 people stayed there in a sanctuary that's quite a bit smaller than ours. Eventually, that work was found out, and the leaders were arrested and indicted. Instead of trying to deny what they had done, they countersued the government for failing to meet their human rights obligations under domestic and international law, and said that as citizens, they had the responsibility to stand up and do it when the government wouldn't. The idea was called civil initiative, and it was based on the legal precedent of the Nuremberg trials, which held civilians responsible for their behavior during the Holocaust, even when it had been sanctioned by their government. These are the kind of ideas that make me so excited about law. You use all these little linguistic technicalities to make a profound and binding statement about our moral responsibilities to each other. A judge barred that sanctuary group from making the civil initiative argument in court. But against the advice of their lawyers, they argued it at press conferences and publicized it as much as they could. It never won in court, but none of the movement's leaders were given jail time, even though they should have been. And most importantly, the US started accepting asylum applications from those countries, not because any legal requirement had stated that they had to, but because they had to. This isn't an anomaly in the way legal change works. This is how legal change works. It's social change cloaked in fancy words that make it seem like it was somehow mandated or predestined. In reality, even the most concretely written legal text is not just open to, but requires both formal and informal interpretation to bridge that gap between text and reality. And this process never stops, even when we're told it has. When I signed up to do this service, I wasn't actually planning to talk this much about law, but a bunch of Supreme Court decisions came out 2 weeks ago that are terrifying, even considering the events of the past few years. So I wanted to start with that story to talk about where opportunity lies for good work to be done, even when the law says something awful. Court decisions are not endings, they're middles. When broad decisions, like the ones that just come out, there's an incredible amount of interpretive work left to do. There are going to be a ton of cases in the next few years clarifying exactly what this summer's decisions mean, and new arguments can be made in all of them. Plus, there's the distance from what the law says and what people actually do, which sometimes means civil disobedience, but sometimes just means filling in the gaps. Today's sanctuary cities, for example, just take advantage of gaps in the law where it doesn't say what's required. They don't change what the law says, but they change how the law works. I got to hear the story of civil initiative from John Fife, the man who came up with it, who was the pastor at Southside Presbyterian at the time. I got to tell him about the work our congregation had done as part of the sanctuary movement, the legacy his congregation's work had left. It was the most hopeful I had felt in a legal or political context in a very long time. But that wasn't where I had expected to get my hope during border studies. The part of the program I was most excited about was my field placement at Casalitas, a short-term asylum shelter in Tucson. My job there was to buy plane tickets for people who had just entered the US to reunite with their families. I was excited to facilitate those reunions and to learn about the asylum law system, which I knew was based on some pretty intense international requirements for the rights of refugees. It sounded like a process I wanted to be a part of. Casalitas was created as a grassroots religious initiative. Border Patrol had started to drop migrants at Tucson bus stations with no help, so a group of volunteers went to those bus stations with sandwiches. 10 years later, the program receives millions of dollars in federal funding every year and operates out of several shelters, including a massive defunct call center filled with hundreds of cots and dozens of pigeons, where I worked. Border Patrol buses clients directly to us from border checkpoints. Nobody is released onto the streets of Tucson anymore. The federal funding allows Casalitas to operate these huge facilities and shelter a massive number of people. But it also deputizes us volunteers, people who care about migrants at the border and are committed to helping them, as the enforcers of unjust border policies. One of the first pieces of training I received was that if someone who hasn't been paroled into the US at the border somehow makes it to our facility anyway, we can't help them. We have to send them away without so much as a bottle of water, or we might lose the funding that lets us help everyone else. And because we're helping everyone else, Border Patrol gets to completely ignore the needs of the people they drop off. Activist energy is being used to make up for governmental neglect, and to do so in a way that treats our clients like cogs on an assembly line. One of Casalitas's many dehumanizing rules was that once people left the shelter, they couldn't come back, so they had to stay until they left for their flight. This was awful for many reasons. A main one being that a lot of people came in with foreign cash that they couldn't exchange and couldn't use to buy those flights. But also because it made our clients invisible to the broader population and cut off the possibility of community care. Out of everyone I talked to about Casalitas in Tucson, including some incredibly inspiring activists, only people from the Border Studies program had ever heard of it. So in the public eye, there aren't hundreds or thousands of people entering the city every day. It was our job as volunteers to hide that that was happening. And that wasn't what any of the volunteers had come there to do. But we did it because we believed the alternative was all of these people being released onto the street with no help at all. When Congress spent all of February and March arguing over a border appropriations bill, we thought the shelter might have to shut down. And I poured myself into advocacy to find us emergency funding, even as I grew progressively more horrified at the model Casalitas was using. But when I talked about how conflicted I felt in my class, my professor said something that shocked me. She had spoken to some immigration service workers from a different organization who knew that Casalitas might be in trouble, and they had been making a plan to take over assistance to our clients if we lost our funding. I don't know how they would have done this, and I'm sure it wouldn't have been perfect. But within Casalitas, there was such a strong ethos that if we didn't do the work this way, there would be no assistance or compassion for the people we served. And that just wasn't true. I was thinking about that false scarcity the day I left Arizona, and how conflicted I felt about the work I had done. It was a Sunday, and I arrived at the airport at 4:30 in the morning. I was half awake at the entrance, steeling myself to pay the overweight fee on my checked bag I knew was coming, when I saw a group of 6 or 8 people waiting at the checked baggage line with no baggage at all. A few of them were wrapped in the Red Cross blankets I had seen stacked at the shelter, And all of them were carrying the white envelopes listing their travel plans that I had filled out hundreds of times. So I went over to them. I told them they weren't in the place they needed to be. I printed out their tickets and got them all into the special TSA line the Tucson airport had set up just for our clients. And 2 hours later, we boarded our flights and we all left. Before I really understood law, I was obsessed with the dramatic big picture changes, the cases that fundamentally alter the way the world works. Because they read like lightning strikes, but what they really are is anthologies. Accumulation of the formal and informal and joyful and bitter and revolutionary and compromising work that has gone into a cause beforehand. And they read like finish lines, but what they really are is the beginning. Not even the end, but the beginning of a chapter, energizing and shaping and sparking whatever work has to come next. I worked at Casalitas for about 3 months. In that time, I saw dozens of staff members and volunteers change their approach to working with clients and their approach to the organization itself. I saw legal and policy decisions on local, state, and national levels come out, which changed the way we worked. I saw groups in Tucson proper change their mind about how these people could be cared for. And I saw thousands of people's lives change as they came into the US and reunited with families from there. I saw people go home. Very little of what I saw at Casalitas was humane or hopeful. But none of it, even the parts that really try, have made that state of things impermeable or permanent. And every time I was told that things couldn't be better, I saw direct evidence that that was a lie. Massive scale change, seeming possible, has never been a prerequisite for walking the path towards it. Neither has being able to see that path. I'm entering this country's legal field in a very dark time to be doing that, and I expect more darkness ahead. But I see no evidence that this darkness has prevented the kind of community-level compassion and innovation that you read about decades later as the preordained secret to things getting better. I see no evidence that the eternal, beautiful instability of the world has been stopped, even when we're told it has. Please stand as you are willing and able for hymn number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere.
Personally, I think we have a shot, because there are people like Alice in the world. There's more love somewhere, and I can never get through this hymn without crying. So help me out, everybody. We'll cry with you. All right. There is no love somewhere. There is no love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is no love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere.
So our closing words are what's in the order of meeting as the meditation, a remix for Remembrance by Christiana Rey Colon. And the dedication of this poem is for my students. This is for the boys whose bedrooms are in the basement, who press creases into jeans, who carve their names in pavement, the girls whose names are ancient, ancestry is sacred, the Aztec and the Mayan gods Abuela used to pray with. This is for the dangerous words hiding in the pages of composition notes, holy books, and Sanskrit. This is for the patients who wait for medication, for the mothers microwaving beans and rice at day's end. This is for the marching bands and girls at quinceañeras, the skaters and the writers whose moms are eloteras. Laughing, cops don't scare us. We sag so elders fear us. We will rewrite our textbooks in our own language if you dare us. You don't have to behave. Stage your own rebellion. Filibust the Senate and bust markers on the pink line. Stain the prosecution's case and force the judge to resign. Force the crowd to rewind the lyrics you invented. Speak away the limits to heights of your existence. Be a witness, be a record, be a testament, a triumph. Set your poems flying in the glitter of the planets. Feed open mouths with truth. The truth is we are famished. The universe is starving for the symphonies you play. Clarinets and thunder and the syllables you say are the instruments. You are infinite. Stretch your hands to heaven, yet let your throat throttle the rhythms of all your fallen brethren. Your legacy is present, your history is now. You are the 10th degree of sound. You are the nephews of the sky. You are the bass line and the hi-hat and the snare drum and the cry of red Septembers. You're the architects of winter. You are the builders of the roads that you're told you don't remember. You are the builders of the roads that you're told you don't remember. You are the builders of the roads that you're told you don't remember. Cast poems in the river and tell them you remember. Skate City Hall to splinters and tell them you remember. Send diamonds to your islands and tell them you remember. Find your God inside your mirror and tell her you remember. What a funny turn of events. This out of battery. Yep. Can we get the other one open here? Yeah. Hello. All right, I hope you enjoyed that intro because you're about to hear it again.